Welcome back. You're watching Beyond the Sound Bites.
Everybody who has written about that innings called it a masterpiece. So in 1900, when they picked the first West Indies team, Jamaica only got two, and M.M. Carr was one. Sir Hilary Beckles has written that when the team arrived in England in those days, they inquired, since there were black West Indian players, one of the questions the reporters asked is whether or not they would be playing in what he called native dress, as opposed to cricket uniform. But M.M. Carr, a Melbourne man, carried Jamaica's flag in the first West Indies team to play in England. I come now to regional cricket, and Jamaica didn't have an auspicious start. They played the first match against what was then British Guyana, an innings defeat. They went on to Barbados, 2 more innings defeat. And that was the pattern. Okay, the first one was 1896 against British Guyana. And there they went on to Barbados, innings defeat. And that continued until a Melbourne man went with the Jamaica team in 1925, Frank Reginald Martin, the first Jamaican to score a century. And against Barbados in that match, he made 195 not out. For the first time, Jamaica was winning a match against Barbados. Frank Martin and Alan Ray tells me that if he was to pick a Jamaican opener, and Alan Ray has certainly been around, he said his first choice would have been Frank Reginald Martin, who went with the West Indies team to Australia. And then to give you a little bit of background in those days, the black players that were there, when they arrived in Australia in 1930, they says the Australian Department of Home Affairs had to give special permission for the 11 black players to land in Australia. And the permission was only given when the West Indies Cricket Board gave an undertaking that the 11 black players would leave Australia within 6 months. That was the environment in which they played. And a Melbourne man, Frank Reginald Martin, in the last test, made 105. The only test match that the West Indies won on that tour in Australia. Now, we move on to 1932. And this is a time when Lord Tennessee's bring the English teams to Jamaica. And Jamaica is now doing quite well because George Headley's around. From 1927, we have George Headley, so it's a totally different ball game. But in the first match against Jamaica, we have a Melbourne man. And that Melbourne man, himself and George are from Raytown, C.C. Passley. And for the first time, Jamaica registers a world record for the 6-wicket partnership of 487. And a Melbourne man, George Passley, nicknamed the Broom, scores a double century. So Melbourne is again on the records. First Jamaican world record. I remember the MCC team of 1954. My father went up from Brownstown, but only my brother went with him. I was not allowed to go. Times are scarce, you could only afford to carry one, so my brother went, I didn't go. But I listened to it on radio. And on the last day, with England chasing a formidable total to win, Stolmer says he gave the ball to a Melbourne man, Esmond Kentish. Finished with 5 for 49. The last 3 wickets clean bowled. The irony is he was never asked to play for the West Indies again. But another Melbourne man, another milestone in cricket. Now, while Melbourne is not the first club to have women playing, but in 1969, Melbourne turned out an impressive set of women, led by Peggy Fairweather, and including Mario Williams, Jean Cadogan, Lizette Hall, and Rona Hall. They swept all before them to win the cup that year. So Melbourne now had cricket teams of both men and women. I come to 1976. As we all know, West Indies dominated Test cricket for 20 years. And Melbourne was very well represented in those 20 years. A devastating pace attack of both Michael Holding and Courtney Walsh. Now, there is one match in particular, and Charlie Mills was there at the Oval, and this is his report of the match. Speaking about Michael Holding, after being diagnosed as having glandular fever and confined to bed with a swollen neck and jaw, he recovered just in time for the Test match at the Oval. And this is how Mills described bowling on that day. For me, the most memorable spectacle was the bowling of Michael Holding. There on that dead placid pitch, on which 5 other fast bowlers on both sides captured only 6 wickets between them, he mowed down England almost single-handedly, capturing 14 wickets. Even more remarkable was the fact that 9 plus 3 of these fell clean bowled and by LBW Root, respectively. No one who saw Holding in action during his heyday will ever forget that match. Silky, silent, gliding, and long run-up, which earned him the sobriquet Whispering Death. As his career moved to a close, conservation compelled him to reduce his length. But after this respite, he returned to full length at the Oval in 1984, in his final spell, thrilling a crowd which responded with applause. Even the ranks of Tuscany could scarce forbear to cheer. Michael Holding. And then we come to 1989. There was a visiting Indian team playing Jamaica. And in that match was a 16-year-old Melbourne youth, Carlton Delisle Carter, who was then a student at Campion. And again, another Melbourne record, the youngest player to represent Jamaica. Carter scored an undefeated 35, and when India batted, he shared the brunt of the bowling with Nehemiah Perry, bowling 35 overs and taking 2 wickets. I understand from Tony Becker that his father, popularly known as Beji, delighted Melbourne, was a tremendous hitter of the ball. And now, Courtney Walsh. And before we come to 1999, I begin at 1979. He's at Excelsior, Sunlight Cup, match against Camperdown. He takes all 10 wickets. More importantly, he takes the first 5 as a fast bowler and the second 5 as a leg spinner. In 1999, in the Test match against Australia at Queen's Park over the Port of Spain, Courtney became the first cricketer to take 400 wickets in Test cricket. When he departed the game, he had taken 519 Test wickets, 227 ODI wickets, 1,807 first-class matches, and in what they call list day matches, 551. He had bowled over 5,000 overs in Test cricket. We will never see his likes again. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's take a break. We'll return after these messages.
Artists, publicists, and producers, contact Super K Studios and BOJTV now to produce all your music videos. Ask for the artist promotional packages. Call 966-2897 or
894-4665.
Email bojtv@live.com.